We're live now. Well, thanks everybody who is here or will be here. We are live today to tell you that we will not be silent. I'm Huli from Heroes and Hooligans, and this is several of our staff members here as well to firmly plant on the ground that overturning Roe v. Wade is not something that we stand for, and we are moving against it, man, because we're fucking angry. We're human and we want our rights regardless, all of us, all the time, whether it's against whatever your stupid fucking beliefs are or not. Like, leave us alone. Leave us alone, man. Shit's fucked up. But we're going to talk about it. Hey, guys. Shit sucks, but thanks for being here.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm Mistress Winter, and I am so I'll start the kind of conversation off with, kind of an admittance of where I'm at. I'm a trans woman, and granted, while the lifting of Roe v. Wade does not affect me specifically, like, I don't have a uterus, I'll never be able to bear a child or even have the option that so many people have had to come to, or what have you. However, it does affect a lot of the women in my life, and it also is writing on the wall for the rights that I know can evaporate very quickly. And as we've seen with this, we never thought that this would actually get rescinded. And it just spells out that nothing is safe. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to support everyone that this affects. I'm here to support the future potential, like, I don't want to use the word victims, but the people who are going to be affected if more stuff gets lifted and changed.
Which is it's already in the movement. I mean, I've obviously not read the whole bill. People have already shared on the internet lines in the bill literally say word, no ambiguity about it, that future Supreme Court rulings are now going to have to take into consideration the validity of other landmark cases, including the gay marriage rights, and a couple of other things. And damn it, I don't want to go back to the 1950s. I will not go back to the 1950s.
I will say that the 1950s had some charm and style, but not in social justice.
Color palettes. I'm here for
pastels.
But nothing else. No.
Yeah. But nothing else.
Yeah. No.
There was no social justice. So, it was.
Let's talk about that, right? Like the future of things being overturned.
Mm-hmm.
Roe v. Wade was protected by the 14th Amendment, the right to privacy. There are other cases that follow directly behind that are now in jeopardy and are already on dockets in fucking red states to get changed. Gay marriage, gay rights, interracial marriages, contraceptives. So now I don't have the choice to choose if I want to be a parent because it is illegal, and I have no way of preventing being a parent. if they remove contraceptives. I'm in the deep, dirty fucking South in Alabama. This shit sucks. We have no rape and incest clause in our abortion laws here. We only have like what doctors deem medically necessary, right? That's all you get here. Our neighboring state right next door, fucking Louisiana, is a state that is already moving to ban contraceptives and making having an IUD a felony. So it's not just our reproductive rights in the form of being able to have an abortion that's under attack. It's literally every civil liberty that comes with having a vagina and a functioning uterus.
I'm a felon, technically, then.
Same. And on that, I was having a discussion with a friend of mine who she has endometriosis, and so pregnancy and all that stuff is already a big problem for her. And we were discussing about how just like, back alley abortions are going to be on the rise again, back alley black IUDs. I mean, half the IUDs on the market are a piece of plastic copper wire. You think people aren't going to start doing that, unsafely and uncleanly? And it's mind-boggling the way it's just I don't even words. I don't have words for how I feel.
On top of like that, one of the major things that's been bothering me, and I tweeted about it, is so like I have an IUD. Not on top of the fact that it could easily become illegal for me to have this in my body. First of all, they can take it with their bare hands over my dead body. Like, I do not give a fuck. This is staying where I put it. And I didn't no. Immediately no. If there's like a 0.1% or like 0.00001% chance that I could possibly get pregnant with this device in my body. It's a non-zero chance, but it's very, very small. Any single pregnancy with an IUD is always going to be an ectopic pregnancy. That spells death for me and the embryo that decided to grow outside of my uterus if I don't get rid of it. And they wouldn't let me. This means that I would not be allowed to do that. I wouldn't be allowed to take care of that and get rid of that so I wouldn't die.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just them spelling my death sentence for me if something ever happens.
And that goes to the core of things. They being proponents or pro-life individuals, and I dare say that a majority, if not all, are religious, or at least claim to be Christian or otherwise.
Well, not otherwise. Let's defend. Let's put a fine point on this, because Islam and Judaism both specifically support a woman's right to protect her own health. So this is very.
I appreciate that, but I guess I would say Mormons are not technically Christians, but they would probably fall into the pro-life.
The sad thing is that if you actually read the Bible and not just cherry pick the passages that support your argument, I from a theological perspective, not a religious one, just theology in general, life begins at breath. It says that explicitly in the Bible.
Right. Let me just put a fine point
everything.
on the Mormon argument also, because I've done some math. I'm only here today for the math. Utah ranks 40th in the nation out of 50 states in childhood poverty.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the reality. They are 40th out of 50 in childhood poverty. They can have their opinions. Idaho, another Mormon state. Again, we are talking about states that have strong opinions, but their results don't match their values at
No,
all.
no, at
The
all.
results don't match their values,
At
and
all.
I'm gonna continue to cite that because from my perspective, you are all going to share very personal perspectives on this, and I think you shouldn't even have to. This is not a question of exceptions or what about this or this is the state, the country has no role in this decision, um, and this is a question of human rights.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. On that point, I was, something that I said on Friday when this all came down, and something I've said quite often is I'm tired. I'm just tired of having to defend some of my rights every year. Being a gay trans woman, it's either having to defend same-sex marriage or having to defend my rights as a trans person in women's spaces, having to even just demand safe spaces where I can just live without the threat of being, gunned down or anything.
Yeah.
In the last 5, 6 plus years, it's just been one thing after another, and it's exhausting. And I was telling Hooli that even just in so I'm going to preface this with I am speaking as a private citizen. I'm not speaking on behalf of the military or anything. Just my knowledge of the military's that rulings in 2016. They lifted the ban on trans service members to serve. So I was able to serve openly. And then immediately the next year, once the new administration came in, they decided to rescind that decision. And by 2019, it was again dismissible to serve as a trans person. And so it's that like constant back and forth. Now, granted, under again a new administration, that's changed again, and things are on the positive in that arena. But it's just this constant battle of fighting for our right to live and be our authentic selves. And I know I'm a little off topic of the Roe v. Wade, but it's part of it.
I don't think it's off topic. It's all part of the same.
It's all in conjunction and all protected by the same thing, our right to privacy as citizens of the United States, right? And the issue is, and Jason and I have talked extensively about this, and like he said, he's here for the math. One of the things that we've talked about in the numbers on the quote unquote pro-life stance is these pro-life states that register more votes towards pro-life than pro-choice are also states that are extremely impoverished. They have higher death rates than states that are pro-choice. They have higher gun violence rates and things of the sort. Like, this isn't about being pro-life. It's not about pro-life, because if it was about pro-life and coupled in the removal of abortions, you would have things like child care reform. You would have paid maternity leaves. You would have nationalized health care. You would have programs to keep your children from starving. You would have gun reforms, so you didn't have to worry about your kids coming home from school. You outlawed abortions before you outlawed fucking automatic weapons in the hands of your citizens. 6 months into the year, we have 300 plus mass shootings. The one that was just 3 weeks ago had 14 deaths, and that was ranked number 11. 14 people had to die, and it's still ranked only 11 in the amount of people that died in mass shooting. And these are all that are still on the docket.
So let's look at why don't we look at average lifespan, right? So let's zoom out to we can have arguments around values and morals. We can have detailed case studies, but let's zoom out and let's look at states that and rank them by average lifespan, because at the end of the day, what a state is responsible for is its citizens, and lifespan to me is a very simple metric. How long do their citizens live? Before I get into the state by state, I want to say that United States, the greatest country in the history of the universe, ranks 46th in lifespan, 46th in the countries in the world, 46, barely in the top 4 dozen, barely in the top 50. We are just ahead of Panama, just behind Estonia. We are two places behind Cuba. Okay, 46. Now let's drill into state by state lifespan. Let's see how the states are doing regarding lifespan. So, bottom 11 states in lifespan are highly correlated to the states that are taking away a woman's right to have control over her own health care. They're legitimately doubling down on their poor rankings in lifespan to say that 50% of their population don't get to make decisions about their health care. That's what's happening. Of the two, if you go back to the 18, the lowest 18 out of 50, 2 of those states voted Democrat in 2020. Those 2 states voted Republican in 2016. Go down to Michigan, voted Republican in 2016. Nevada voted Republican in 2016. So on the screen here, you have 20 states. All 20 voted for Donald Trump. Now, I don't want to make this political, but it's impossible to separate the decisions that people make from the impacts that happen. It's impossible to separate what the Supreme Court decided this week from the decisions that have been made over the last 6 years. It's impossible to do it. So I've got 20 states here, and I've simply ranked them by lifespan. How long can a baby expect to live when they are born? That is as simple as it gets. And the bottom 20 states voted for this. That has to change. It's impossible to separate. So we talk about, don't bring politics into this. This is about.
Sorry to interrupt, Jason, but who's got the wind tunnel?
I don't think it's me.
It's not me.
I'm sitting next to an open window. It's probably me.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Lala.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, I apologize. I didn't mean to undercut your point, but yeah, there are direct correlations, and further correlations to support of or lack thereof of social programs and support or trying to pull people or help people out of poverty and racial and LGBTQ plus. I am struggling with words today. Integration and support.
I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jane Elliott. Have you ever listened to Jane Elliott at all? Okay. Jane Elliott is a professor, and she's been teaching social constructs and human studies for a very, very long time. And I'm going to share a video, Jason, and then we'll pop back up to your stats.
Okay.
I don't have a better version of it than the one that's here on my social media in front of me, but she makes a very valid point. Speaking of, you had brought up racial. Let's listen to this.
And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book, The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute. And he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, the main problem.
Oh, sorry, we lost it.
An advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you almost exactly what he says. He says there are three things we can do to solve this. Number one, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again, he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those waiting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and women had better pay attention to this, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you? And if it doesn't, I want to know why it doesn't.
I love her.
Yeah.
There's so much behind everything else that we just don't think about sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about poverty, because Winter brought up poverty. This is the same rankings. I threw all this in and sorted by poverty. You know that child poverty is highly correlated to the poverty of the parent. But here you go. So this is poverty statistics. But to the point that was just brought up, I think we should also look at, if we zoom out again, the metrics of human success are a couple of things. To me, the two obvious ones are average lifespan and world population. And the world has done really well in the last 50 years on those metrics. We are backsliding on lifespan. But world population, this idea that Amy Coney Barrett said we need a domestic supply of infants. What do we think she meant by that? So going back to that video, she very clearly, and the Donald Trump rally from last night with the Freudian slip, white babies, it's all very clear what they want. But these metrics of lifespan and population don't bear out these conspiracy theories that have trickled their way into the Supreme Court, and that's super troubling. It's one thing to think that a spray tanned clown in a big suit would believe nonsense, but the Supreme Court is supposed to be above politics. The fact that they aren't, and they believe conspiracy theories, is really troubling and not supported by facts. Let me let me bring up some trends on here's U.S. population. So we're currently about 334 million people. In 1970, let's see, 1973, we were at 215. So this conspiracy theory that we have this birth dearth is simply not true. It's simply not true. The U.S. population has grown 50% since 1973. So it's not supported by the facts.
So we talked about this earlier, right? Like Supreme Court and things like that. And people are angry now, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to be angry. We deserve to be angry. Like, it's our human rights are our rights, and that's why we should be angry. But the fall is coming, and that is going to be our time for action. So people really need to like get it together and read and understand who it is that you're voting for. Whether or not we like it or not, there is a two-party system here. Independent votes don't help anymore. They harm. Like, it doesn't help if you don't choose the side that's on the side of human rights. Whether they're a bunch of dickheads or not, they're still on the side of our rights and our freedoms and being able to have those things. So it's like very, very important that you educate yourself past the opinions of your predecessors. Like, put your grandparents' opinions aside, your parents' opinions aside. Like, learn for yourself. Do your research. Pay attention to the things that are happening all the way around you. Get the fuck off of social media and get to a protest. Call your local government. Go to your local elections. Start there. You have to pay attention to the people you're electing and the things that they stand for and everything else on the ballot. Like, you can't just say, well, I've been a Republican my whole life. It's not about being a Republican. It's not about being a Democrat. It's about being a human. We are all citizens of the same planet. And it is idiot of people to assume that we are the only sentient beings in the entire existence of everything that there ever is. And this is not what I want our world being represented by. Like, it's not what the world I want my children to grow up in. It's not the world I want anybody to have to live through. It's 2022. We have been fighting for years and years and years for freedom, for freedom, for freedom. Where the fuck is our freedom? And we're not going to have it unless you stay mad and you get fucking educated. Take yourself to a fucking library, read a book, do some history research, figure out your own ideals and what you think is right, and do what is right. Like, get away from crowdthink, because crowdthink is what got us here in the first place, because they use scare tactics and they use big hot ticket items to get everything else that they want wrapped up in the middle of it. There are other things going on aside from them overturning Roe v. Wade, like the constitutional right to concealed carry in a country where our children are dying every day in schools, in fucking schools, where they're going to educate themselves to become adults and to live good lives. Our mortality rates are not low because of women's health care. Our mortality rates are low because the government doesn't give a shit about the average everyday fucking citizen. We are a capitalist country. We are moving towards an oligarchic country where all we care about is the top 1-2%. Get your ass out and get educated and get to a fucking voting booth and make it fucking count. Call your Senate. Call your representatives, send emails, tell them that if they don't do what they need to do to right these wrongs, that you're not voting for them, and they'll get scared. Enough of these calls, enough of these emails, enough of these protests, enough education, and these people will understand that they no longer hold the control over what they consider the ignorant everyday population. educate yourself, rise out of that, and show them that we are people, that we have a brain, we are free thinking beings, and we will not stand for our civil liberties and rights being taken from us on the whims of how many individuals? 9, all of which sat in front of our Congress and said that they stood for Roe v. Wade, that it was a constitutional right for women to have health care. And then they rescinded that in a 5-4 overturn on Friday morning.
Yeah, and to add to that, anyone that tells you that they're pro-life, if they live in one of these states, the statistics don't bear that out. You're 4 times more likely to be murdered if you live in Mississippi than if you live in New York state. The news would tell you that New York City is a dangerous place run by criminals. The facts are you are more likely to be murdered. I've sorted the same data by homicide rate. You can see it for yourself. You are more likely to be murdered without your consent, murdered in these states.
I hope that's without your consent, because if you're consenting, then that's just
assisted suicide.
Yeah,
assisted suicide.
Yeah, let's sort by assisted suicide.
God, no, please.
Richard Kevorkian.
I did a report on him in school.
Yeah, but let's just stop the pro-life thing in its absolute tracks, right? Absolute tracks. I do not want to hear.
That was kind of what I was getting at earlier. Is it's not pro-life is a misnomer. We're putting aside that those who are pro-life don't seem to care about life after the womb. Putting that aside, they also seem to promote the puritanical anti-sex ideals that the first white people to America, or the Americas, in 1400s had don't have sex out of marriage, and it's only between a man and a woman, and it's only for the procreation of children. That's why we get rid of sex education in school. That's why when abortion comes up, their defense is, well, if you can't afford a child, then you shouldn't be having sex and stuff like that. And that it doesn't follow.
Well, let's just remember, most of these men couldn't find the pleasure orgasm on orgasm maker on a woman to save their life, right? Remember, Ben Shapiro didn't know that his wife could get wet.
That goes back to sex education, and of course we have this pervasive abstinence only sex education, that the best way to not have any problems like STDs and pregnancies is by not having sex. And you know what that tends to do? That actually tends to increase the amount of STDs and pregnancies.
Jason,
and
where's your data
abortions.
on that?
Yes.
I could give me 10 minutes. I could figure that data out. I would also say that, if you go back 500 years, the literal Queen of England had to have 16 babies to have, I think 3 survived to adulthood. That's a real thing that happened. That was the most entitled, privileged person probably on the planet 500 years ago, because healthcare was not at a place where we could ensure someone's health. We also had a world population that stagnated around 500 million people for thousands of years. because of our inability to keep mothers alive through pregnancy and deliver healthy babies. It was only advances in our ability to take care of mothers and babies that allowed us to get to the point we are right now in this world. So it is non-negotiable. It should be non-negotiable in a society that we backslide in our progress of supporting women and their health. It's non-negotiable.
Rolling back real fast to abstinence.
Mm.
I grew up in church. I grew up in that world. I went to college in that world. I got married into that world. And I divorced myself from it in 2020. But there is an immense amount of guilt on my end because of how many years I spent on the other side.
Guilt about what?
Feeling like being pro-life. Not understanding that there was just so much I didn't get. And purity culture, abstinence culture doesn't help with any of that. It makes it so much worse.
So
it doesn't, and again, not to harp on this, but world population bears that out. In the eras in human history where men controlled women's sex lives, world population stagnated. Period. There's just no getting around that.
If I may ask, Joe,
Yeah.
What brought you out of that mindset? Was there a particular idea or something happened, an event? What got through that changed your perspective?
Being in an abusive marriage with someone who I was trying to get out of, and I was panicking that, oh my God, what if I was pregnant right now? I would have to stay with this man. There's no way he'd let me get rid of it. And I looked at myself, and I took some time, and I was like, this is a full change of something that I believed for 24 years. What does this mean for me now? And I had to think for myself for once. Like I hadn't put myself first and thought about me, because growing up in the church, it's like no, it's not you, it's somebody else. You always put yourself last. You're always supposed to be last. Humble, humility, blah blah blah, whatever. You're supposed to be underneath everything else. Like in first grade, I was taught that I was basically a cockroach in the eyes of God, so that was fun. But like, you just don't think for yourself. You only think about other people. And suddenly, if you're pregnant, it's like, oh, there's a whole other person I need to think about. Crap. Okay. I guess I have no rights anymore. And this just is happening to me.
Sure.
And I just wasn't okay with that anymore. I was like, that's not fair. I'm thinking of myself getting out of this terrible marriage. I'm thinking about the abuse and all the issues I've had over the years and getting out of that. And if I can at least have enough self-respect for myself to get out of something like that, I can carry that through to the rest of my life. And that's been my thought process of like, if I can respect myself, everyone else should be able to have bodily autonomy to do so. And as soon as we were getting divorced, I got an IUD put in because I was like, I am not going to have to fight for birth control. I don't have insurance right now. I'm not going to fight for birth control. I'm just going to get something that I can get for 5 years for free, And it was on the military's dime too, because he was in the military. And I was like, I'm going to do that. I am going to do my best to not have to like put myself in a position that I'm going to go back on this thought at all. Like, my parents are very pro-life. My entire family is very pro-life. My dad's side of the family is Catholic. And it was so ingrained in me. It's taken a long time for it to get out.
Sure.
But it's definitely out now because I'm angry. I'm really angry.
And you have every right to be. And I think a lot of us are. I would say all of us here are, at least. I have 2 points to that. First, thanks for sharing that. I really, really appreciate that. Second, first of the two. So it seems to me, at least by what you expressed, that your thought processes changed when it became personal, and when you were in a situation, a traumatic situation, that kind of changed your worldview. And that is kind of my fear, is that people have to have it personal in order to act. And going back to what Hooli said, it may not affect you personally. It may not affect you directly, but we need you. We need you to go out and vote. We need you to make your voices heard on behalf of those it does affect. And that goes into my second point, that maybe if I can remember it, because my brain does not want to work today. I lost it. Jason, did you have something?
Joe asked about, you brought up STDs and
Gotcha.
And here are the trends with STDs. So,
coming in with the calculations. Let's go.
Yeah.
STDs have fallen precipitously as women have been given more rights and awareness over protection has increased. So again, the math is there, and I will add while you think about while you catch your point again. If you correlate to religious, if you listen to people on the side of religion, they will tell you that they are morally superior. So let's look at STD rates by geography. So as you can see here, the highest density of STD rates highly correlate with the Bible Belt. I'm not saying that Christians are less moral. I'm really not. I am saying they're more hypocritical on this particular point. So the facts, once again, do not support the ideology.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Angry, but happy you're here.
Minnesota does very well in our metrics, by the way, Alex.
Yeah, I know. I was telling you guys all week about it.
Of course you know. I could have just had you on to just tell us.
Yeah, Minnesota is solid.
Yeah, Minnesota is pretty solid. Yeah.
Wisconsin's kind of trying to get there. If we could fuck Ron Johnson out of the place.
You are never going to get over what the Koch brothers gerrymandered to that state.
I can come live in your basement, right?
I don't have a basement, so no.
I have a spare room, Lala, but it's in Kansas, so you might not want it.
Mm-mm. No, it's again, I don't even have words.
And you shouldn't need to, honestly. No one should have to. Alex is the resident lawyer, and we all like to stunt on lawyers and dunk on them, but in reality, they are one of the most important weapons in this. So said we're going to raise money for the ACLU and another fund, and I think that's really important because that's really where this is going to be won and lost.
Yeah. So we're wrapping up Trevor Project Charities on the end of this month, on the 30th of this month. And we're going to take a little bit of a break, but I think we're going to immediately roll into funding for reproductive rights and lawyers to help do so. We'll be rolling funds towards the ACLU and towards abortionfunds.org. As much as I would like to directly funnel money to Planned Parenthood, unfortunately, they are subject to being shut down more regularly than they should be. They're consistently under fire because even though that place provides more than just abortion services, it's the, hot ticket GOP item to shut shit down. So we're going to roll with abortionfunds.org and funnel money that direction and towards the ACLU for lawyers to help fight back and give us back what is rightfully ours. Fucking healthcare, cunts. Like, our government is cunts. That's how I feel about it right now, actually.
And just because you did bring up Planned Parenthood, as someone who has used a number of services from Planned Parenthood, including access to an abortion, they are some of the nicest, most helpful people you can ever hope to meet most of the time if you need their services for any sort of reproductive health. And I'll just say it because it's what, like, the biggest fact about Planned Parenthood that people don't understand is that none of Planned Parenthood's federal funding has ever in the history of that organization been used for abortions because it is such a hot ticket item. It has always been separate. So when people are mad and angry that their tax dollars are killing babies, they're not, and they never have been. Ever.
So, we talk about it, right? Like, women's rights being shut down right now. But, like, if you're a dude and you're listening to this or you're here, vasectomies are fucking reversible. If you can't respect your partner's rights and the fact that they don't have them, fuck yours and go get a vasectomy, because no woman's body is your choice at all, ever. And if you love the women in your life, you'll fucking do such. Like, you can get that shit reversed. You can get it reversed.
Yeah, and if someone pushed back on me on Twitter this morning about some anecdotal evidence that not all reversals are successful, that's fine. Go put some of your swimmers on ice at a sperm bank. Put them on ice. It's much cheaper than you think. And then go get your. It's cheaper than your college debt. Let's put it that
Sure.
way.
Okay.
So
Yes. By like a factor of 10, but yes.
Right. Okay. So
that still puts it in the thousands of dollars. I'm just saying.
Vasectomy is free. And
hi, Jenny.
And it is not your right. 50% of this country needs to understand that it is not your right to force the burden of a decision onto your partner, even if that partner was only for a few hours. It is not your right to do that. It is not their burden. It is not their responsibility. And I reject any assertion that it is entirely on a woman to decide how to be responsible for her decisions. If you are not going to give a woman the right to decide about her own health, then you cannot use that argument. Again, none of this is supported by the facts. So I'm unsympathetic to any male argument to the contrary. We lost Alex.
Yeah, he's driving. He was driving when I messaged him earlier. He had a date today.
Oh.
But Alex gets it too. He's what do we get called? Bleeding heart liberals, right? Because we want human rights. But Alex, he jives with us in that regard.
Well, and again, we talked about that this morning. I've never registered for a political party in my life. I tried to bring numbers to this today because I don't have a right to an opinion on it. So I tried to just zoom out to the numbers and say, does the other side have any supporting facts to back up their assertions? And the reality is,
They fucking don't.
no.
Well, I mean, that's part of the larger problem is that people who would support this ruling and such don't seem to go on facts and figures and logic. You know, they offhand ignore them.
No, all they do is listen to Tucker Carlson and Fox News.
And Ben Shapiro.
I met Tucker Carlson, and can I give my Tucker Carlson story?
Sure.
Please. Absolutely.
I'm just checking you guys can hear me, right? Now that I've got my sound configured.
Yeah, you're here.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Just because, first off, I'm sorry I'm late, because if I would have known that we were doing this before this morning, I would have put my groceries to be picked up at a different time. Second, just because, you know what, we need a little bit of humor. I have been listening to Alanis Morissette's You Ought to Know just on repeat, because that feels like the single most fitting song indicative of anger in this moment.
Yeah, no, I think Alanis is going to make tons of money on her tour when she goes, because she's definitely having a moment.
Fucking absolutely.
Isn't it ironic is also one that you could rewrite.
Honestly, just the entire discography. Jagged Little Pill is incredibly fitting as well in this moment.
So here's Tucker Carlson. Before he was real famous, he in 2000, I think he worked for CNN at the time. There was a show where he was like a pundit, and he had his bow tie, and he would argue across the table when they were doing the both sides stuff. He was in Philadelphia. I had a meeting at a place where he was. I recognized him, and it was one of those situations where you have like a vestibule in a large building as a windbreak, right? So he storms past an old lady. I don't want to call her old, but she was probably 80 plus. Storms past her and blows through the inside door. And I see her coming. I'm holding the outside door. And he comes through and storms past her and doesn't hold the door for her, the inside door. So I wait, and I have this horrified look, like, one, I know who you are, and two, this is 2000, I think August, Republican National Convention was there that week. I'm horrified that he would just like ignore her, and he didn't knock her out of the way. I don't want to say that, but he definitely didn't hold the door for her. and he stormed through the door like he owed me holding the door for him. And that's my Tucker Carlson story.
And nary a thank you.
No. Just the most, you know, it's you can tell who someone is in those moments when nobody else, when no cameras on and no one else is looking. He had no regard for her, no respect for anyone. Absolutely nary a thank you. And he has gone on TV every night presenting himself as some sort of check and balance for woke culture, and the reality is he lacks any human decency at a private level when no one else is looking. So
that's called lack of integrity there, my friend.
Although, and just again, trying to inject some humor into this whole thing, I will say that his more recent suggestion that men suntan their privates,
Perennium sunning.
you know, if you are happy about the latest Supreme Court ruling, maybe you should take Tucker Carlson's advice in that area, because you don't need to reproduce.
Have you guys talked about like the slippery slope and how this is gonna impact like access to birth control too?
Yep.
Yep.
That was
Mentioned
like the first thing that
yeah,
I
Fair
and
enough.
Lee and yeah.
Fair enough. I'm so sorry. I've missed so much. I'm just late to the party.
No worries. No worries.
I had a anecdote with that.
Please,
because
we would love to hear.
This is it's a personal thing for me. So when I was 15, I was in the hospital for just various unknown reasons. It wasn't a prolonged stay or anything. It was just a series of emergency room visits. As I just had this horrible pain in my abdomen, to the point that like I would collapse when I was in school. I was fucking 15. And every single time I went into the emergency room, it was a different thing. It was maybe your appendix is bursting, maybe something is wrong with your kidneys. And after I think the third or the fourth time that this happened, there was a really big instance that I fully collapsed and I almost passed out. And I remember it very clearly. My sophomore year of high school, I was about to go take a math test. And my boyfriend saw me just against the wall, just kind of fading in and out. And he helped me stand up. I'm like, okay, cool, let's go take the math test. And he goes, absolutely fucking not. You're going to the nurse. They called my mom and they went to go she came to pick me up, took me to the emergency room again for like the third or fourth time. And it was at that point that they stopped and they went, maybe you need to go see an OB. Maybe you need to go and do this. Because it's not your appendix. It's not your kidneys. We've done the MRIs. We've done the CTs. We've done everything we can to eliminate every other possibility. So finally, after probably about 6 months of in and out of the emergency room, somebody finally told us to go to an OB. And that was when I discovered that the reason that it was pain was because I had cysts on my ovaries that ruptured, and that was what was causing that pain. And I'm asexual. I've always been asexual. I'll always be asexual. But I personally have to be on birth control, because if I am not on birth control, you never know when that is going to happen, and that's a rupture, and it puts me in so much pain to the point that I almost black out, and I am one stubborn bitch when it comes to shit like that. That I will sooner absolutely autopilot through not sleeping for basically 71 hours before I will black out of anything. So looking at all of that and seeing that it's like, I don't want kids, I don't want sex overall. But I really like not being in the hospital. I like not being afraid of what's gonna happen if I lose access to this as a resource, as a lifeline, for lack of a better word. And I have a lot of friends who are more directly impacted by Roe v. Wade, but everybody is affected by this in different ways, and that's the primary way that it affects me. And everything about this is fucking terrifying. And you guys saw me in general chat when this happened. I was teaching a class at the time, and my students came back from wellness, and they had no idea what was happening. They had no idea what Roe v. Wade even was.
Yeah.
And I had to sit down in a schedule where my class lasts 2 weeks. I've lost 3 days to an observed holiday for Juneteenth, so that we didn't have class that day. We had an in-service day the Friday before, and then we just had a technical problem because, frankly, sometimes my job is just stupid. So of 8 days that I'm supposed to have my students, I was cut down 5. And I was just like, fuck it, we're already behind. We're going to take 45 minutes and we're going to sit here and we're going to actually talk about this, because you can't go into this blind. You need to know what's happening. And one of my students was super religious, and I explained it to him through that lens. I'm so sorry, Lala. I'm on a train of thought. So having to explain that to him, and having the opportunity to sit down to him with him and just go, I'm not trying to change your mind one way or another. I'm an academic. I have always been an academic. I am not giving you bias in one way or another. This is the facts. This is what is happening. And yeah. So that was a whole experience that just kind of led to me like sitting in my office crying on Friday and realizing that that was a thing. So, yeah.
I was just going to add on to that the fact that Roe v. Wade has been part of our laws, part of our society for long enough that there are generations who truly like have no concept of how important it is. I think that's just really telling about how ridiculous overturning Roe v. Wade really truly is. They're quoting like precedent and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, but this is a 50-year precedent. Like,
yeah,
50 years in American history is a pretty big chunk of time.
And that ties in everything of like the fact that our education system is fucking broken. Like I'm from Elizabeth, Colorado. That is where I graduated from high school. And I was lucky to be one of the, I shit you not, 9 students in my graduating class of about 150. My hometown is 1,600 people. Jason, for point of context, just because I know you're our like travel dude, I'm from Elbert County, Colorado. I'm from the part of Colorado that is so fucking conservative, it got sick of Colorado's bullshit and actively attempted to become its own state. That is where I'm from. I was one of 9 students in my graduating senior class that got to learn about Roe v. Wade. And that was because it was only 9 students who took AP government. In my hometown, U.S. government is just going over the Constitution. AP government, their final exam was no shit our first test. And we went over all the Supreme Court cases. We went over all of that. We went over Mapp versus Ohio, Miranda versus Arizona. We went over University of California versus Bakke. We went over fucking Roe v. Wade. And that was a luxury for us 9 students. Why the ever-loving fuck is that not the standard? Why is that not the floor standard?
Well, we can take it as alarming, and we are certainly entering a dangerous time. And it's also a sign of our success. So while forces have been working to undermine that, those forces didn't really have a voice before 5 or 6 years ago. So I just want to give a little bit of historical context. The trend line for humanity is towards less violence, longer lifespans, and higher population. Those are the macro trends. This graph right here is from the book The Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker. I highly recommend it in these dark times because it gives a ton of context. It's a very heavy read, but it will make you feel better about the long arc of history, which does tend towards less violence and progress and more human rights. The fact that our children don't have to know about Roe v. Wade can be taken both ways, as a good thing and as a bad thing. In a dangerous time, it's important to remind them that these things they assume are rights are not permanent, and you have to continually reinforce them. But also, I would like a society where children never had to go through nuclear drills like I did as a kid, or active shooter drills. I think we would all like our children not to have to know what to do if someone with an AR-15 walked into a building. And I view this as an assault on our freedoms, our basic freedoms has occurred. We have to educate quickly. But I think those children have come to expect these freedoms to the point where it won't take them very long to understand that these are things that they, when they walk into a ballot box, they should push back against. So for me, I think we're entering a really dangerous period of time, and it might be a decade of really dangerous time, and people will die because of this. There's no question that people will suffer and die. At a societal level, I think this could be the Tea Party moment for people that believe in human rights. And it needs to be. It really needs to be a moment where everyone stops fighting against each other and realizes that our shared values and humanity are at stake, and we act to protect those.
I think
I like bringing up drills and stuff. I can't even go anywhere. Like, I go to a baseball game, I go to a show, I go to a movie, and I am always thinking of how I'm going to leave if someone starts shooting. And that's besides the point of what we're talking about today, but like, how fucked up is that? Like, that's... And I knew about Roe v. Wade because growing up, there were multiple times that the Supreme Court was trying to overturn it. And so I was growing up in the church, and they were like, oh, we need to pray especially hard this weekend while they're talking about deliberating about this and blah, 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 blah. And so I've been aware of it for a very long time. And I just turned 28. But the fact that there are people out there who are younger who don't know what this is surprising. I feel like it's surprising to me because I've seen it so often in everything.
Well, I mean,
that everywhere.
It goes back to kind of what I was talking about with sex education, and then Jenny was talking about Shanae, I apologize.
You're fine. It's spelled weird. Blame my parents. Continue.
What Shanae was saying about their education. Education just in general is broken. We not to get too onto a tangent, but we teach to standardized tests and everything else, and we don't actually teach people how to think and instead of what to think.
Which is why people think that colleges and higher education are indoctrinating people into being more liberal, because college does teach you how to think in most places. But I was going to say, based from what Jojo and what Jason was saying, the fact that there are people that don't understand what Roe v. Wade is and the significance of it, it is both deeply troubling and also a sign that the rights and protections afforded by that case have been so deeply ingrained in our history for so long that it's no longer necessary to teach people, hey, this is important because it gives you this. And so now we're seeing kind of the backlash of what happens when you stop teaching things that are, big and important like that. But the other thing I wanted to say, and again, I think Jason was really putting this very well. We are entering a time in human history where things are not good. And it's an unfortunate fact that without strife, there can be no peace. Because when you remove issues, when you remove strife, when you remove war and all of these things that make, peace and freedom so much more enjoyable, those things, they lose meaning, and that's when you slide backwards. So it is an unfortunate sign of progress that we have advanced so far in the right direction that we've lost sight of what it is like to be in the trenches fighting for these things. It's kind of, so it's definitely cyclical, and you hope that it keeps trending upward towards the good. And I hate that we are in our lifetimes, in my daughter's lifetime, that this is the type of things that we have to deal with. But the only thing we can do is make the best of the time that we are given, and hope that we can have our voices heard and be a part of that continual trend upwards towards more rights, towards more freedoms, towards more equality. And that even though we might be seeing a slide backwards, that it's going to be, 10 steps forward, 1 step back, or 10 step forwards, 3 step back, but never so many steps backward that we're not still farther than we were before.
Yeah, I agree. And what the issue is that today someone may be sentenced to a life sentence or to death because of what was decided last week. And it's small consolation for the lives that are going to be ended or ruined by this, that 50 years from now, this is probably a blip type moment where humans had to reassess and continue to progress. That's small consolations to the lives that are going to be shattered by this, because this is not going to be undone in a week or a day. I want to thank everyone who shared personal stories today. And I want to say it again if I haven't said it. You don't owe anyone any explanation. You don't owe anyone any personal reason. No one has the right to tell you why you should decide what you decide for your life. So thanks to everyone who shared that. I think you'll make other people feel understood, but no one deserves. You don't owe that to anyone. You really don't.
No, I agree, and I think in that same vein, like I was rushing getting home from picking up groceries, being like, I want to put this out there because I can't speak for Winter or Lala or JoJo, but in my opinion, at least in terms of my personal values, if I'm not going to be vulnerable and if I'm not going to be vocal, then where does that progress come? I want to be loud. I want to be heard. I don't. And maybe I think this is a testament to the way that I was raised, because my mother had an abusive first marriage, and so growing up hearing different things like that, I think it just ingrained in me this matter of don't be silent, because there are so many people that are afraid to speak up that if I don't speak up, what the fuck am I doing? And my mom, I have that belief for animals, and we will always speak up for animals because they can't vocalize these things for themselves. So fucking, of course we're going to do that for people. And going off of kind of what Lala said about like, maybe this is just a blip. It's a big blip, but the single thing, this is where I'm going to get emotional. The single thing that has kept me going through all of this is belief in the future generation, of belief in the fucking kids of our nation. I know that Jason, JoJo, Lala, you guys do this. Winter, I'm not sure if you know, when I'm not doing Heroes and Hooligan stuff, I am actually a DM for kids ages 8 to 15.
That's really cool.
And it is my blind faith in those kids that gives me faith that maybe this will work out. Maybe we will stop. We won't have to fight as fucking hard. Because I have a session in 40 minutes. It starts at 3:00. And I am greeted with a collective 25 kids over the course of 5 different sessions, that whenever an NPC is introduced, they ask their NPC's pronouns as quickly as they ask their name. They revel in treating NPCs like people. And they are in chat letting each other know when they're not having a good day. When they're going, I'm going to look like I'm not super smiley or anything, but I feel safe here, and I am trying to learn not to mask as often because I deserve better than that. And I have never had such blind faith in the future of the world than when I interact with those kids. Because am I exposed to a very limited number of them? Yes, 25 is a very small number. But when that faith in each other and faith in acceptance of a person is there, I think that's the thing that's been keeping me sane through all of this. And having those amazing kids, the youngest of which is 8 years old, And that 8-year-old might actually be the most vocal out of all of them. We as adults, as millennials, as the younger Gen X, we are hurting. We are scared and we are fighting. We look at those fucking kids and we see everything that we are fighting for. We see everything that makes it worth fighting for. Because we are going through our shit. But if we can help our kids, our grandkids, and everybody that comes after us fight a little bit less, I will be loud every time. I hope that made sense.
I'm trying to figure out if I play Rage Against the Machine or Whitney Houston after this stream.
Alanis Morissette, what are you doing?
No, that was
remember
really powerful. So, and I'm gonna have to jump off soon too, but I wanted to say that I think one of the biggest and most important things we can do right now is be loud and be open and be vulnerable, because as I mentioned earlier, I did have in college, I had need of Planned Parenthood, and they were there for me, and I didn't tell my mother until about last month.
Wow.
And her first words included, "Don't post that on social media," because she didn't want my dad to know. She didn't want other people in her life to know. And you know what? God damn it. They need to know. It needs to make them uncomfortable. It needs to be spoken about, because we're proving that when we don't speak about things and when we are not open and vulnerable about them, then shit like this happens. So, by God, we have to be loud. We have to talk about why these things are important, because I would not be the person I am today if I didn't have that choice. I would not be where I am. I wouldn't have the daughter I have. I wouldn't have the life and the family I have. And yeah, maybe I would have had that other life, but I guarantee you the way my mental health, the way it was, the part of my life I was in, my financial instability, neither me nor that potential human life would have been in a good spot. And there is nothing in our country in the last 6 years, but even in the last 10 or 15, that would have made me feel comfortable knowing that I was going to be helped or supported if I had been forced to make a different choice. So I think it's really just so important that we speak the truth and speak out loud and let people know that they will be heard. And I think it's really the last thing anyone should ever say to their friend or their daughter is, "Okay, I still love you, but don't tell anyone about it."
Yeah, absolutely. And it is entirely your choice, not her choice, not your father's choice. It is entirely your choice who you tell or don't tell. Also, the statistics support you. If you look at child poverty rankings, the states that are most restrictive are also ranked worst in child poverty. So the argument that that this is about the welfare of children does not hold up to scrutiny. So thank you for sharing, and in fact support your decision. And quite frankly, I don't know your parents, and I don't care at all what they think.
Before I go, I'll just reaffirm that your data is very powerful because the state I lived in at the time was Florida, which I see is sitting at that nice number 4 spot or number 3 spot on
3.
your
Third
data.
from the bottom.
So I
Missouri,
definitely
Missouri's got it tough here. Last
Doesn't
and bottom.
surprise me. Does not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I love all of you. I'm gonna have to go wash my face and do
Thanks, Lala.
things, but
I
I
love
love you all.
Message me if you need me today, okay?
Love
Thank
you,
you,
Lala.
Lala.
Love you,
Bye.
babe.
So I'm sorry for bringing the spreadsheets out.
No, you're fine. Come at
I
us
had-
with data.
At least it wasn't a PowerPoint.
I
Oh, that would have been if I had time to prepare.
I didn't have time for PowerPoint. I have graphs though. I think it's important to thank each of you for your personal experiences. But again, I want to say that anyone listening or watching that may not have, I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. I think it's far more widespread than any of us think. But anyone who think it doesn't apply to them probably knows someone who has a story like this that we've heard today. But even if you don't, it doesn't matter. At the human scale, it honestly, you're the decision about how a person manages their life and their health is up to them and them only. Less than 0.1% of humans are qualified to even have any opinion on this at all. And I promise you, even if you are a doctor, MD, if you are a male, you are not qualified to have an opinion on this. You just aren't. If you you just aren't qualified. But what you can do is support health and freedom, and not demand excuses, not demand reasons. This is a personal decision that you can support other people in making. And it's as simple as that. One thing we are here, and Holy dropped off, but it's non-negotiable for us here. Anyone that isn't comfortable with this, that's on any of our campaign streams, any of you are no hard feelings. You can bow out of our campaigns. You can unsubscribe. It's non-negotiable for us. These things are just table stakes for us in the tabletop RPG space. There are plenty of other spaces that you can get your creative outlet. This is one where we support these things. Winter, do you have final thoughts?
Oh, so many, but how many I can actually voice, that's a whole different thing. Just, you are right that this is a dark time for many people. And more than ever, we need to look out for each other, check in with each other. So if you know someone who's affected by this decision, emotionally, or because their rights have been stripped, or however, check in with them. see how they're doing. I know that I've needed some check-in, and I haven't gotten a lot, but so just check in with each other. One of my favorite musicals, and one of my favorite songs from Dear Evan Hansen is "You Will Be Found."
It's been in my head this whole conversation.
Yep. So just look around and someone will come running. So we're here for you.
Joe, last thoughts?
I am classically a very optimistic person. Annoyingly so. Sometimes to my detriment. That's how hopeful I can be. And I'm still hopeful for what's currently happening, that things will get better. I just have to continue to reconcile with myself and my past self and kind of let her go and push forward and fight for what's right instead of what I was raised to believe. Because that's bullshit.
Shanae, final thoughts?
I want to emphasize to everybody that is watching that you have to go out, you have to be vocal about this. You need to go. Starting a conversation is one part of this battle. Going in and voting and making sure that you are heard in that manner is the other part that actively contributes to this. And it might be a little bit of time out of your workday. It might be a little bit of time that you have to go and travel. It is worth it. Legally speaking, if it is an election day, you are allowed to take time out of your workday if you cannot go and vote otherwise. They're allowed to give you that time so that you can go and vote. If your workplace is telling you otherwise, that is not the case. So do what you can to make it to voting booths and make sure that you are heard, even if it is a mail-in ballot. Anything like that matters, because you do not have to be loud to be counted in an election. You do not have to share your personal stories to vote no, to have even an attempt at this, because a very influential part of the reason that our cabinet is the way it is because voter turnout is incredibly low. And we've seen it at an all-time high, especially in the 2020 election. But it's still nowhere near what it could be. So even if you think your voice doesn't matter, that mentality alone is what keeps them winning. Maybe when it comes to the numerics of elections, one vote doesn't matter, but millions do. And that makes the difference. It is not us acting alone, it's us acting in tandem. And that's what gets us somewhere. That's what gets our progress.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And in 2004, let me preface this. I'm not a Democrat. I think I said that before. I've always prided myself on a balanced ticket. I try to find votes for every party, even the Blue Enigma party. Like, I want to find a spot to give a vote to as many political parties as possible. I don't believe in a two-party system. But in 2004, George Bush won the presidency despite losing the popular vote. And that's happened a lot recently in the last 30 years. That's happened a lot. But the reason he won that election is because he won Ohio. And the reason he won Ohio is because he won Cincinnati. And the reason he won Cincinnati is because he had a campaign to scare people in Cincinnati that gay marriage would become legal if they voted for the Democrat and John Kerry. He was a single issue voter, a single issue voter that carried a city, that carried a state, that carried a country. And that is how politics can work sometimes. When you see the national politics has become more and more refined analytically with data. They know where the votes can come from, and they target those votes. So it's really important to not think that it's a popularity contest or that your vote doesn't matter. Your vote absolutely matters. Now, you may not always be in the county that matters on every single off-year election, but your vote absolutely does matter. Those people in Cincinnati swung the results of the national election, and they deferred what was an inevitability, which was equal rights to marriage and health care for married couples. That is now back on the table per the Supreme Court ruling. That is now at risk. So that will be used as a political argument by some this fall. And there's no presidential election, but there are local elections all the time that are being packed with people that are working angles that you've never even thought about and are working against things that are from energy policy to tax policy to environmental policy to civil rights to economic availability and equality. All of these things are being fought at the local level. The country is being gerrymandered into more and more secure districts and stratified economically. So your votes absolutely do matter. And while I'm not personally affected by the decision last week in a precise manner, these things affected me 25 years ago, and I was the beneficiary of the freedoms that we had 25, 30 years ago. The one thing that I did lose last week was my ability to, in good conscience, vote a balanced ticket. I really have no moral option now other than to throw all of my political weight on the side of basic freedoms. So I encourage everyone to really think twice before skipping a voting day and really start thinking about what's happening at the local level.
I fully honestly also, even though it's not exactly relevant until 2024, please do research into your primaries and caucuses, because there are rules about how you can participate in them. And sometimes, I know me personally, I grew up in Colorado where you don't have to be registered for a party in order to participate in a primary or a caucus. In Kansas, you do. So I had to go and declare a party, because I'm not going to be silent at any part of the process. And being active in those primaries, in those caucuses, those are important because they decide our nominees. So
yeah, it doesn't matter which side.
Do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could argue that you can pick, if we're going to be in a duopoly and you have to pick between two parties, you can pick either one of those parties and you'll get the vote in the primary for that party. And I can argue both sides of it. You can go in and you can sort of push the opposition side to maybe elect a more moderate candidate. I think that's a viable choice, or you can lean towards the party that is more aligned with your interest and have an active say in their primaries on who you want representing you. So I think this is I've always resisted this. I'm in a state where you don't get to vote in primaries if you aren't registered. I've never been registered for a party. So that may be a thing that I have to now change. And I'll decide which one of those two options I want to take.
Yeah. So that's something, do research. Not every state needs to have a registered party user in order to participate in primaries and caucuses. But that's the other part of this fight, is choosing who our nominees are. The Bo Burnham song about how is the best case scenario Joe Biden, that entire song might be a bit, but the way that could have changed, the way that could have been different, is if there was better turnout in the primaries. So that is a real thing.
Right. Okay, let's leave it at that. I think we've all said a lot. And to everyone who stuck with us, thank you for sticking with us. We do appreciate it. We decided to do this because Holly and I were so angry this morning that we thought it might infect some of the fun during our game streams, and we didn't want to drag it down too much. So we figured let's just have a dedicated stream to get this stuff out. So appreciate everyone who joined us. Winter, Shanae, Joe, Lala, and Holy, and Alex for his 5 minutes. And appreciate everyone who watched. So we will see you next time, and we'll have fun, I promise, on our next stream. Bye.